Hey guys, it's Flowing Brook here. I'm back with another video, and I know I sort of said that I was gonna make more content, or at least that was the expectation. And I'm sorry about that. I didn't make more. Just no real great excuse for it, just laziness, and I apologize for that. But yeah, and I'm also sorry about the background. I recorded this one time, and then the glare was just so annoying. So, I mean, this is my temporary measure that I put up. Sorry about that. But anyways, back to, actual light novel discussion. The novel I want to talk about today is called Dungeon Busters. Now, Dungeon Busters, you can find it on J Novel, or at least the second volume is currently being translated on there. They translate it into parts, probably into like 10, sometimes maybe 13 different parts. So the parts are released every single week. As it's being translated, you can read every single part as long as you have the membership. Although I think you can read the first part free of charge. And the light novel, you can find it on Amazon or Book Nook or whatever it's called. We're going to be discussing currently. It's $5, I think, on either of those platforms, for the digital version. So getting into it, Dungeon Busters. Okay, so the main premise of this novel, or at least we'll start off with the main character. His name is Ezo Kazuhiko. Now, Ezo, or Kazuhiko, it's last name, then first name, so Kazuhiko. So Kazuhiko is a sort of management consultant. He does the data and statistics, and I guess looking into your company's, portfolio or financials and trying to just make it more efficient and to just try to help your business grow. So that's his main job. He's around 40 years old, and you can see that he's somewhat unhappy with his life, but his life takes a turn as he finds a dungeon in his basement. And yes, this is a common trope that's being used, but trust me, this novel is different from those. It's not just wish fulfillment. It's not just him being handed OP powers. Although he does get an extreme advantage, as when he goes into this dungeon, he realizes that one, time is slower by about 3,000%. So like maybe you can be above ground for like a second, and you can be underground. It's like 3 hours. Okay. So when Kazuhiko explores this dungeon, he finds a card floating in midair. Like a baseball card, right? Okay, now what this card contains inside of it is a kunoichi, or a sexy ninja, or a ninja, but that's female. And so what this sexy ninja tells him is that he's the first ever dungeon discoverer, and he gets her as a sort of companion to help him conquer these dungeons. So what this kunoichi explains to Kazuhiko is that due to discovering the first ever dungeon, that there is going to be an emergence of a total of 666 new dungeons with varying difficulty, and that him and the rest of humanity only have 10 years to complete them, or not. In the future, there's going to be a monster stampede, which is going to most likely destroy the entire world. Now, this leaves Kazuhiko with a great amount of guilt, and he decides, well, you know what? This is sort of my fault, so I'm going to do my very best in order to complete these dungeons myself, and to conquer all 666 dungeons. So this proves to be somewhat difficult for Kazuhiko, as he is a management consultant, but there is a benefit to exploring these dungeons, and although you can't exactly level up, there is a thing known as enhancement element, which every time he kills a monster, part of that enhancement element, goes into him, and improves his physique. It's sort of like mana. So every time he kills a monster, he sort of absorbs it, and this allows him to grow just a little bit stronger, maybe like 0.001% stronger, right? So if he kills a lot of monsters, he realizes that how strong he can grow and how much time he has to actually, get stronger. So him being a management consultant, he's able to, sort of do the math and sort of calculate the time it'll take him to reach a certain level or a certain strength. So he decides to just grind, and he grinds a bunch of monsters and decides, well, you know what? I might have to kill around 10,000 of these slimes or goblins or whatever is inside this dungeon in order to get stronger. So that's what I'm going to do. And this takes him a very long time. And of course, with the fact that, dungeons time is slower than actual time, he decides to just spend most of his time inside of these dungeons. He sort of forgoes most of his management consultant, duties, and he decides to just fully explore a dungeon in order to get stronger so that he can eventually save the world. Now, there is one thing I forgot to explain, which is sort of a caveat, which is my bad. There is a time period as to when the next dungeon will emerge after discovering the first dungeon, which is around a year's time. So, this sort of gives Kazuhiko the time to actually explore this one dungeon inside of his basement, and not have to worry about the rest of them. So, sort of in total, it gives him 3 years time due to dungeon time. So he just grinds monsters throughout this whole time, and he gets slowly younger and younger, just because his muscles get firmer. He slowly gets stronger, and he slowly gets skinnier as well, as he was somewhat overweight being a management consultant and 40 years old. So this allows him to do that. Man, these are a lot of spoilers, to be honest, because it's really fun to read this for the first time and being able to discover the ways in which Kazuhiko is able to, his scientific approach into discovering these dungeons. So I'm not going to delve too much further into this topic, but yeah. Okay, so now going into the next section, speaking in a little bit more broader terms and not really trying to give out too much detail, but still trying to explain what I enjoyed about this novel. So the story elements are really what I enjoyed most about this novel, just reading along and finding out more information about the dungeons and how Kazuhiko is planning to deal with them, as well as how he's planning to actually conquer them. And him being a management consultant gives, the author a lot of leeway into, delving deeply into the sort of economical side of it. So how much money he actually needs to earn, what he needs to do in order to, build up an actual enterprise to, go overseas, or to build a business and to, rake in more money, not only with the dungeons, but outside of the dungeons, and how he's going to deal with the government, and how he's going to deal with the sort of pandemonium that comes with new dungeons being discovered outside of the world. So this really brings us in tune with how we see other people deal with these dungeons, or the rest of the world, how they deal with these dungeons, and we just get to see how sort of Kazuhiko deals with it and how he plans for the future. So then going into Kazuhiko's character a little bit, I enjoyed his character, even though maybe it's somewhat unrealistic for a management consultant to learn how to fight and to actually explore a dungeon. When you actually read the novel, you'll see that his companion that he gets, the Kunoichi, is a great asset to him, as she's able to really act as a buffer and sort of training wheels for Kazuhiko. He's able to sort of get carried by her in the beginning and then slowly get better and better. So after like a lot of repetition and a lot of the enhancement element, he's able to just get stronger over time. And of course, over 3 years, he's able to just his reflexes get better, as athleticism gets better, just because of the benefits of these dungeons. We're also able to see sort of a noble side of Kazuhiko, which is what sort of makes this novel, or at least what makes Kazuhiko's character fun to follow along with. As he feels somewhat responsible for his actions, and he wants to repent for them, and he wants to actually help people. And it's not really seen as something too heroic. It's just something that he feels of a responsibility for, and you find this somewhat endearing in his character. At least I do. And this makes it fun for me to read along, as I don't really like sort of wimpy characters. I also don't like reading about somewhat edgy characters or young characters, as I can't really relate to them, even though I am sort of young. It's hard for me to identify someone young as being someone noble, as it's very, I don't know, it's just difficult for me, just because I've been around people my own age, and I know that they're not exactly like that. So when you find Kazuhiko, who is somewhat older and wiser, and you see that he has a genuine care for other people, it's just fun to read, and there is a certain degree of wish fulfillment as it is, you know, a fantasy book with dungeons involving in them, but you never really feel like that just because the pace is so good in this novel. I never find that the novel is moving too fast, even though there's so many different story elements and things being explained to you. You find it's never too much, at least in my opinion, as the author just does a great job at pacing. So as you read on, you know, you'll sort of get what I'm saying, as the author is able to include many different story elements as well as different tropes that you'll find in other novels. For example, there's a gacha system, which anybody who is a dungeon explorer can have, which is a sort of a system you get as you hunt more monsters. Every sort of 100 monsters or so that you killed, you get one of their cards. So these cards act as companions, much like the kunoichi, except that, you know, obviously they're not as strong as her because she is sort of like an S-rated card. And so once you get around 10 of these cards, you can trade them in using the gacha system. And what gacha is sort of just like a randomizer that sort of like slots. Not really, but every 10 cards or so you can trade them in for maybe a little bit better of a card. They can be miscellaneous, or they can be, you know, like a sword or a you know, armor, or maybe some other item like a potion that you might want. Yeah, this is just one of those story elements that, although it sounds corny, it works very well in this novel, and you're really excited to see what Kazuhiko gets as you know, the more and more he grinds, the more cards he gets, you know, the more he saves up, and then he, you know, just uses them all at once. Man, I don't want to give too much away. I'm sorry that was a spoiler. I'll put somewhere back in the video that there's spoilers up ahead. But yeah, this is just an overall fun novel for me to read, and although you see all these different tropes, due to the excellent pacing of the novel, you don't really feel as if, you know, they're bad tropes. You feel that they're somewhat unique just based on the way that the author is able to do them. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents on this novel. I hope you all read it, and I hope you all enjoy it, and yeah, I'll be back with another review later on. But just to summarize, this is a very unique take on dungeons popping up in a new world where it's sort of modernized, and you're also able to actually see, you know, story progression and character development. And it's not really kingdom building, but sort of business building. I don't know. Yeah, it's just a fun overall read, and I would recommend it to everyone who's a light novel fan. And if not, just give it a chance. Only $5, although you might not want to spend that money. I think it's a good deal, but I also love books, so I'm not going to force it on you guys. Yeah, tell me what you guys think in the comments, and I'll be glad to read your guys' opinions. So yeah, later, Flowing Brook out.